They threw her out to die in the snow, and now the most dangerous man in the city is coming for blood. One shattered vase, one freezing night, one girl left to die because she was nobody. But when Adrian Voss discovers what happened in his own house while he was away, someone is going to pay, and not with money. This is a story about survival, rage, and the kind of love that's forged in fire and ice. Stay until the end, like this video. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. A cruel winter night. The mansion sat like a tomb on the hill, all stone and iron and old money, wrapped in snow that hadn't stopped falling for 3 days. Inside, the air was warmer but no less suffocating. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that had seen generations of wealth, and the marble floors were so polished you could see your reflection, if you were important enough to look. Lena Carter was not. She was 23 years old, thin as a rail, with dark hair pulled back so tight it made her temples ache. Her uniform was plain black cotton, worn soft at the elbows, and her hands were red and raw from scrubbing floors that never seemed clean enough. She'd been working in the Voss estate for 8 months, and in all that time she'd never once seen the man who owned it. Adrian Voss was a ghost, a name whispered in hallways, a presence felt but never confirmed. What she had seen, every single day, was Margaret Hale. The head house manager was a woman built from ice and iron, 50-something, silver hair scraped into a bun so severe it pulled at her eyebrows, lips perpetually pressed into a bloodless line. She moved through the mansion like a warden through a prison, her heels clicking sharp against the floors, her eyes catching every crooked picture frame, every fingerprint on glass, every breath taken without permission. And she hated Lena, not because Lena had done anything, but because Lena was quiet and small and easy to break. It was Christmas Eve. The other staff had been given the night off, most of them anyway. The cook had left at noon. The groundskeeper was gone until the 26th. Even the driver had taken his wife to see family in the city. But Lena? Lena was still there, moving through the empty halls with a feather duster, because Margaret had decided someone needed to stay. The East drawing room, Margaret had said that morning, her voice clipped and cold. Dust everything, everything. Mr. Voss may return tonight, and I will not have him see a single speck. Lena had nodded. She always nodded. Now, as the grandfather clock in the hall struck 8, she stood in the drawing room surrounded by shadows and silence. The curtains were drawn. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers. Outside, the wind screamed against the windows, and snow piled higher against the glass. She worked carefully, methodically. Dust the mantel. Dust the shelves. Dust the... Her sleeve caught the edge of something. It happened so fast. The vase, a Ming Dynasty antique, blue and white porcelain, centuries old, tipped off the side table. Lena's hand shot out, fingers grasping at air, but it was already falling. Time stretched. She saw every rotation, every flicker of firelight on painted dragons, every inch of distance between the vase and the floor. It hit the marble with a sound like a gunshot. Shattered. Porcelain exploded across the floor in 100 glittering pieces. Lena stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She dropped to her knees instantly, hands shaking as she tried to gather the pieces, as if she could somehow put it back together, as if she could undo what had just happened. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The door slammed open. Margaret stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, and for a moment she looked like something out of a nightmare. Her face was stone. Her eyes were black. "What?" she said quietly. "Have you done?" Lena's throat closed. I didn't mean to, I swear. My sleeve just... Stand up." Lena stood, legs trembling. Margaret walked into the room with slow, deliberate steps. She looked down at the shattered vase, then at Lena, then back at the vase. "Do you have any idea," Margaret said softly, "what that was worth?" "I'm sorry," Lena choked out. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it." Margaret laughed, sharp and humorless. "You make $9 an hour, girl. That vase was worth more than you'll earn in your entire pathetic life." Lena's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry. "Please, I'll work extra shifts. I'll do anything. Just, you're fired." The words hit like a slap. Lena stared. What? You're fired, effective immediately. Margaret's smile was thin and cruel. Pack your things. You have 10 minutes. But, Lena's voice broke. It's Christmas Eve. There's a blizzard outside. I don't have anywhere to. Not my problem. Please. Lena stepped forward, hands clasped. Please, Mrs. Hale, I'll sleep in the servant quarters tonight. I'll leave first thing in the morning. Just don't make me go out there. It's not safe. Margaret's expression didn't change. You should have thought about that before you destroyed a priceless artifact. It was an accident. I don't care. Margaret turned toward the door. 10 minutes. If you're still here after that, I'm calling the police and having you arrested for theft and destruction of property. Lena's blood went cold. Theft? I didn't steal anything. Didn't you? Margaret glanced back, eyebrow raised. Who's to say you didn't pocket a few valuables on your way out? I'm sure Mr. Voss would believe me over some nobody Maid. The threat hung in the air like poison. Lena realized in that moment that there was no winning this. There was no appeal, no mercy, no chance. Margaret wanted her gone, and Margaret had all the power. She swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am? She didn't remember walking to her room, didn't remember shoving her few belongings into a battered duffel bag. 3 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a book she'd been reading in stolen moments. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind screamed. Where am I going to go? She had $83 in her wallet. No car. No family. The nearest town was 6 miles down a road that was probably buried in snow by now. I'm going to die out there. The thought came quiet and certain, and it terrified her. She zipped the bag shut and slung it over her shoulder. Her coat was thin, just a cheap polyester thing she'd bought at a thrift store. No gloves, no hat. Her boots had a hole in the left sole. When she walked back through the halls, they were empty. Silent. The chandeliers glittered overhead like stars she'd never reach. Margaret was waiting by the front door. Out, she said. Lena stopped. Mrs. Hale, out. There was nothing left to say. Lena stepped through the door, and the cold hit her like a fist. The wind tore at her coat, her hair, her skin. Snow swirled in the air so thick she could barely see 5 feet ahead. The world was white and black and freezing. Behind her, the door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Lena stood on the front steps, shaking, and looked out at the long driveway that disappeared into darkness. The wrought iron gates at the end were barely visible through the storm. 6 miles to town. She took a step forward, then another. The snow was already over her ankles. She didn't make it to the gates. Halfway down the driveway, her legs gave out. The cold had worked its way into her bones, turning her muscles to lead, her thoughts to sludge. She collapsed into a snowbank, gasping, and for a moment she just lay there, staring up at the sky. The snow fell on her face, soft and relentless. This is it, she thought distantly. This is how I die. She thought about her mother, dead 6 years now. Thought about the halfway house she'd stayed in before landing this job. Thought about how small and insignificant her life had been, how easy it would be for the world to forget she'd ever existed. No one would miss her. No one would even notice. Her eyes drifted shut. The cold didn't hurt anymore. Somewhere far away, an engine roared. Headlights cut through the dark. A car door slammed. Footsteps, fast and heavy, crunching through snow. Jesus Christ! Hands, warm, strong, lifted her out of the snow. She felt herself being pulled against something solid, something alive, and then she was moving, being carried, and she couldn't open her eyes, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but feel the faint, distant warmth of another human being. A voice, low and rough and furious. What the hell happened here? Another voice, sharp and familiar. Sir, I can explain. Where is she? Where's the girl who works in the East Wing? A pause, then carefully. I'm afraid she's no longer employed here. What do you mean, no longer employed? She broke a valuable piece, sir. I had no choice but to terminate her. Where is she? Silence. Then quieter, more dangerous. Margaret, where's the girl? I sent her away. She left an hour ago. And this? She made her own choices, Mr. Voss. The warmth around Lena tightened. The voice above her head was shaking with rage. You threw her out in a blizzard on Christmas Eve. Sir, Get out of my sight. Mr. Voss, please. Now. Footsteps retreating. Lena felt herself being carried again, upstairs, through hallways, into warmth. She was laid down on something soft. Blankets were piled on top of her. Hands, gentle now, peeled off her wet coat, her frozen boots. Stay with me, the voice said. You're safe now. Just stay with me. She tried to open her eyes, managed to crack them just enough to see a face above her, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes, a jaw tight with anger and something else, something almost like fear. Who? She whispered. Adrian Voss, he said quietly, and you're not going anywhere. Her eyes closed again. This time, when the darkness came, it didn't feel like dying. Boss. When Lena woke, the first thing she felt was warmth. Not the false warmth of fever, but real, solid heat. Blankets piled thick, a fire crackling somewhere nearby. The kind of warmth that soaked into your bones and made you believe, just for a moment, that the world wasn't entirely cruel. She opened her eyes slowly. The room was enormous. High ceilings, dark wood furniture, a four-poster bed with curtains tied back. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and a fire roared in a stone fireplace across from the bed. Outside the window, snow still fell, but it looked softer now, gentler. She sat up slowly, wincing. Her body ached everywhere, muscles stiff, joints sore, skin tingling as blood flow returned to her extremities. She was wearing clothes that weren't hers, soft cotton pajamas. Too big, the sleeves rolled up. Someone had changed her. The thought made her flush, but before she could panic, a voice spoke from the corner of the room. You're awake. She turned sharply. Adrian Voss sat in a wingback chair near the fire, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was maybe 35, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was black, slightly too long, pushed back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. All hard angles and sharp edges, except for his eyes, which were a startling pale gray. He looked like old money and new danger rolled into one. How long? Lena's voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. How long was I out? 18 hours. Her eyes widened. 18? You were hypothermic, barely breathing when I found you. He took a sip of whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass. The doctor said another 20 minutes and you'd have been gone. Lena looked down at her hands. They were bandaged, white gauze wrapped around her fingers. Frostbite, probably. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For, she gestured vaguely, causing trouble. I didn't mean to. I'll leave as soon as I can. I just need to. You're not leaving. She looked up sharply. Adrian set his glass down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I want you to tell me exactly what happened. Everything, from the beginning. Lena hesitated. It was my fault. I broke a vase, and Mrs. Hale... I've seen the security footage. Her breath caught. Adrian's expression darkened. I saw what she did, how she spoke to you, how she threw you out into a goddamn blizzard and locked the door behind you. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something cold and furious. So I'll ask again. Tell me everything. Lena swallowed hard. And then, slowly, she did. She told him about Margaret's cruelty, the impossible standards, the constant fear. She told him about the vase, the accident, the begging. She told him about standing on the front steps, knowing she was going to die, and not knowing what else to do. Adrian listened in silence, didn't interrupt, didn't react, just watched her with those pale gray eyes. And Lena had the strangest feeling that he was cataloging every word, every detail, filing it all away for later. When she finished, he stood. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For trusting me with the truth. He walked to the door, then paused, glancing back. Rest. Eat. There's a bathroom through that door if you need it. I'll have someone bring you clothes. Mr. Voss, Adrian. She blinked. What? Call me Adrian. He smiled faintly, and it changed his whole face. made him look younger, less dangerous. You're not staff anymore, Lena. You're a guest, and guests don't call me Mister. He left before she could respond. Lena sat in the enormous bed, surrounded by warmth and softness and safety, and had absolutely no idea what to do with any of it. Downstairs in his study, Adrian Voss poured himself another whiskey and stared at the security monitor on his desk. The footage was paused on a single frame. Margaret Hale, standing in the doorway of the east drawing room, her face twisted with cold satisfaction as Lena knelt on the floor, begging. He'd watched the whole thing 3 times now. Watched Lena try to salvage the broken vase. Watched Margaret threaten her with theft charges. Watched Lena walk through the snow until she collapsed. And watched Margaret turn off the exterior lights so no one would see. His hand tightened around the glass. Adrian Voss was not a good man. He knew that. He'd built his fortune on things most people didn't want to think about. Real estate deals that displaced families, business acquisitions that destroyed competitors, investments in industries that thrived on human suffering. He'd made enemies. He'd broken laws. He'd done things he couldn't take back, but he had rules, and one of them was simple. You don't throw people away. He picked up his phone and dialed. Sir? His head of security answered on the first ring. I want Margaret Hale out of this house within the hour, Adrian said quietly. Pack her things, escort her off the property. Make sure she understands that if she ever sets foot here again, I'll have her arrested. Yes, sir. Anything else? Adrian glanced at the monitor again, at Lena's face, pale and terrified and so damn young. Find out everything about her, where she came from, who she is, what she needs. A pause. You planning to help her, sir? I'm planning, Adrian said slowly, to make sure no one ever hurts her again. He hung up, drained his whiskey, and went to go destroy Margaret Hale's life. Margaret was in her quarters when the knock came. She opened the door to find 2 security guards, both large, both unsmiling. Ma'am, one of them said, Mr. Voss has requested that you vacate the premises immediately. Margaret's face went white. What? Why? We're not at liberty to discuss that. Your belongings are being packed as we speak. This is insane. I've worked here for 15 years. Yes, ma'am, and now you don't. They escorted her downstairs through the grand foyer, past the staff who had gathered to watch. No one spoke. No one met her eyes. They all knew. Margaret's hands shook with rage and humiliation as she was led to the front door, the same door she'd shoved Lena through the night before. Adrian was waiting there. He stood with his hands in his pockets, expression calm, and when Margaret tried to speak, he held up one hand. I'm going to say this once, he said quietly. You are never to contact anyone in this household again. You are never to speak about what happened here. And if I hear that you found work anywhere in this city, I will make sure you lose it. He stepped closer, and his voice dropped to something cold and deadly. You tried to kill someone in my house, someone under my protection. The only reason you're walking out of here instead of being dragged out in handcuffs is because I'm giving you one chance to disappear. Margaret's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're making a mistake, she hissed. No, Adrian said. You did. The guards took her arms and led her out into the cold. Adrian watched until the car disappeared down the driveway. Then he turned and went back inside, back upstairs, back to the room where Lena was sleeping. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching. She looked small in the big bed, fragile, but there was something in the set of her jaw, even in sleep, that spoke of strength. She survived, he thought. She survived, and now she's mine to protect. The thought should have felt strange. He barely knew her, but it didn't. It felt right. He closed the door quietly and went back to work. There were enemies to crush after all, and he was just getting started. Lena woke to the smell of coffee. She blinked slowly, disoriented, taking in the unfamiliar room again, the high ceilings, the rich mahogany furniture, the fire that someone had kept burning through the night. For a moment she thought she'd dreamed it all. The blizzard, the cold, Adrian Voss carrying her out of the snow. Then she saw the tray on the nightstand beside her bed. Coffee in a porcelain cup, toast with butter and jam, scrambled eggs still steaming, a glass of orange juice, a small vase with a single white rose. She sat up slowly, her body still aching but functional now, and stared at the food like it might vanish if she looked away. When was the last time someone had brought her breakfast in bed? Never. The answer was never. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, and tried not to cry. When she finished, she found the bathroom Adrian had mentioned, all marble and gold fixtures and a shower with 6 different heads. There were clothes laid out for her on the counter, soft gray leggings, an oversized cream sweater, thick socks. Everything fit perfectly, which meant someone had guessed her size. The thought made her uncomfortable and grateful in equal measure. She dressed, finger-combed her hair, and stepped out into the hallway. The mansion looked different in daylight, less like a tomb and more like a fortress. The walls were lined with art she didn't recognize, oil paintings in heavy frames, sculptures on marble pedestals. Everything whispered of money so old it had forgotten where it came from. She wandered through the halls, trying to find her way back to somewhere familiar, and nearly jumped out of her skin when a voice spoke behind her. "Miss Carter." She spun around. A man stood there, late 50s, dressed in an impeccable black suit with silver hair and the kind of posture that suggested military training. His expression was neutral, but not unkind. "I'm Thomas," he said. "Mr. Voss is head of security. He asked me to show you to his study when you were ready." Lena's stomach twisted. "Am I in trouble?" Thomas's mouth quirked slightly. "No, miss. Quite the opposite." He led her through a maze of corridors and down a wide staircase. The study was on the first floor, tucked away in the east wing, a room all dark wood and leather furniture with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the snow-covered grounds. Books lined every wall, and a desk the size of a small car dominated the center of the room. Adrian stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the snow fall. He turned when they entered. "Thank you, Thomas," he said quietly. Thomas nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Lena stood there, suddenly very aware of how out of place she was in her borrowed clothes, in this room, in this life. Adrian gestured to one of the leather chairs in front of his desk. "Sit, please." She sat. He didn't. Instead, he leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed, studying her with those pale gray eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," Lena said honestly. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how to—" "You don't need to thank me." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "What happened to you should never have happened. Margaret Hale was my employee. This was my house. That makes it my responsibility." Lena shook her head. "It was an accident. I broke the vase and she tried to kill you." The words hung in the air like a blade. Lena's throat tightened. "I don't think she meant—" "I watched the footage, Lena." Adrian's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. "She turned off the exterior lights after you left. She locked the door. She knew exactly what she was doing." He paused. "Margaret Hale is gone. She won't be coming back. And if she tries to contact you or anyone else in this house, she'll regret it." Lena stared at him. "You fired her. I destroyed her." He said it without emotion, like he was discussing the weather. "I've made calls. She won't work in this city again. Not in any capacity that requires trust or authority. Because of me, because of what she did." Adrian pushed off the desk and walked to the window again. "I have rules, Lena. One of them is simple. People who work for me are under my protection. All of them. From the groundskeeper to the cook to the—" He stopped himself. "To everyone. Margaret violated that. She's lucky I didn't press charges." Lena didn't know what to say. She'd spent 8 months terrified of Margaret, and now the woman was just gone. Erased. Because Adrian Voss had decided it. "What happens to me now?" she asked quietly. Adrian turned to face her. "That depends. What do you want?" Lena faltered. "I don't understand." "You worked here for 8 months. You were paid $9 an hour to clean rooms and dust furniture and be treated like dirt." His eyes held hers. "I'm offering you a choice. You can leave if you want. I'll give you 6 months severance pay, a recommendation letter, and help finding a new job. Or you can stay." Lena blinked. "Stay?" "Not as a maid." Adrian's voice was careful, measured. "As, let's call it a personal assistant. Someone who helps manage the house, organizes my schedule, handles correspondence. The work would be easier. The pay would be better, significantly better. Lena's heart hammered. Why would you do that? Because I need someone I can trust, Adrian said simply. And because you survived something most people wouldn't. That tells me you're stronger than you think. She wanted to say yes. The word was right there, pushing at her teeth, desperate to escape. But something held her back. I don't know anything about being a personal assistant, she said. You'll learn. I don't have any qualifications. I don't care about qualifications. I care about character. He moved closer, his gaze intense. You could have stolen from this house, could have lied about what happened, could have blamed me for hiring Margaret in the first place. But you didn't. You took responsibility for an accident, and you nearly died for it. He paused. That's not weakness, Lena. That's integrity. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of him. I need time to think, she whispered. Take all the time you need. Adrian stepped back, giving her space. You're welcome to stay here while you decide. No expectations. No pressure. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. She stood and walked to the door, then paused, glancing back. Why did you come back that night? She asked. You weren't supposed to be here until after Christmas. Adrian's expression shifted, something dark and unreadable crossing his face. I don't know, he said quietly. Instinct, maybe, or luck. He looked away. All I know is that I got in my car at midnight and drove through a blizzard because something told me I needed to be here. And when I saw the footage, he stopped, took a breath. I'm glad I listened. Lena felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying. Me too, she said, and then she left before he could see her crying. She spent the rest of the day exploring the mansion, not snooping, she didn't dare, but wandering, learning the layout, memorizing which hallways led where. The place was enormous, 20 bedrooms, at least. A library that could have doubled as a small bookstore. A conservatory full of plants that someone clearly tended with obsessive care. A gym, a home theater, an indoor pool. It was too much. All of it. She found herself in the kitchen around noon, drawn by the sound of clattering pots and the smell of garlic and rosemary. A woman stood at the stove, early 60s, round-faced, with flour in her gray hair, and an apron that said, "Kiss the cook." She looked up when Lena entered and broke into a wide smile. "There you are," she said, her accent faintly Irish. "I was wondering when you'd come down. You must be starving, poor thing." "I had breakfast," Lena said quickly. Thank you. It was perfect." "Breakfast was 4 hours ago, love. Time for lunch." The woman gestured to a stool at the kitchen island. "Sit. I'm Mary, by the way. I've been cooking for Mr. Voss since he bought this place." Lena sat hesitantly. "I'm Lena." "Oh, I know who you are." Mary ladled soup into a bowl, something rich and creamy with chunks of potato and bacon. She set it in front of Lena with a thick slice of bread. "Whole house has been talking about what happened, about what Margaret did." Lena's stomach sank. "They're angry, aren't they? That she got fired because of me?" Mary snorted. "Angry? Love, half the staff wanted to throw a party. Margaret Hale was a miserable cow who made everyone's life hell. You just happened to be the one she went too far with." "Oh. Eat," Mary said firmly. "You're too skinny. Mr. Voss told me to make sure you're fed properly, and I take my job seriously." Lena ate. The soup was incredible, warm and savory and exactly what she needed. "How long have you worked here?" she asked between bites. 8 years. Mr. Voss hired me right after he bought the place." Mary wiped down the counter, her movements easy and practiced. "He's a good man, you know. Doesn't always show it, but he is." Lena thought about Adrian standing in his study, his voice cold and certain as he talked about destroying Margaret's career. "He seems intense," she said carefully. Mary laughed. "That's one word for it. He's a hard man, I won't lie. But he's fair. And he protects what's his." She gave Lena a meaningful look. "You're under his roof now, love. That means you're under his protection. And trust me, there's nowhere safer to be." Lena wasn't sure if that was comforting or terrifying. She finished her soup, thanked Mary, and wandered back upstairs. Her room, the guest room, she corrected herself, had been cleaned. Fresh flowers sat on the nightstand. The fire had been stoked. Someone had left a stack of books on the dresser with a note in elegant handwriting. Thought you might enjoy these. She picked up the top book. Jane Eyre, one of her favorites. How did he know? She spent the afternoon reading, curled up in the armchair by the fire, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt something close to peace. That evening, Thomas knocked on her door and told her Adrian had requested her presence at dinner. It's not required, Thomas added quickly, but he thought you might prefer company to eating alone. Lena hesitated, then nodded. Okay. The dining room was smaller than she'd expected, intimate almost. A table that could seat 12 but was set for 2, at opposite ends. Candles flickered in silver holders. The windows looked out over the dark grounds, where snow continued to fall in soft, lazy flakes. Adrian was already there, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made his eyes look almost silver. He stood when she entered. You came, he said, and there was something in his voice. Surprise? Relief? You invited me, Lena said simply. I did. He gestured to the seat across from him. Please. They ate in silence at first. Roast chicken with herbs, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. Mary had outdone herself. This is really good, Lena said finally. Mary's been trying to fatten me up for years, Adrian said, the corner of his mouth quirking. She'll be thrilled to hear you appreciate her efforts. Lena smiled despite herself. Adrian set down his fork and looked at her. Have you thought about my offer? Her smile faded. I have. And? She took a breath. I want to stay, but I need to know something first. Ask. Why me? Lena leaned forward. You could hire anyone. Someone with experience, with references, with everything I don't have. So why? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. When I was 14, he said, my father threw me out of the house. It was winter, not as cold as the other night, but cold enough. I slept in a bus shelter for 3 days before a teacher found me and called social services. Lena's breath caught. I know what it feels like, Adrian continued, to be thrown away, to be told you're worthless, to believe it. His eyes met hers. I built everything I have so I'd never be that powerless again, so I could protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. He paused. You remind me of who I was, before I learned to fight back. And now you're teaching me to fight? No, Adrian's voice was firm. I'm making sure you never have to. Something twisted in Lena's chest, gratitude and fear and something else, something she couldn't name. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Adrian's shoulders relaxed just slightly. Good. They finished dinner talking about small things, books, weather, the history of the house. Adrian was surprisingly easy to talk to when he wasn't in business mode. He was smart, well-read, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. When the meal ended, he walked her back to her room. We'll start tomorrow, he said. I'll show you the office, introduce you to the system. It won't be difficult. Thank you, Lena said. For everything. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Get some rest. And Lena? Yes? You're safe here. I need you to believe that. She nodded, even though part of her wasn't sure she'd ever feel completely safe anywhere again. That night, she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside. Somewhere in the house, she heard footsteps, voices, the normal sounds of a place settling into sleep. For the first time in 8 months, she didn't feel alone. The next morning, Adrian was waiting for her in his study. He'd cleared off a smaller desk in the corner and set it up with a laptop, a phone, and a leather-bound planner. This is yours, he said. Everything you need to get started. Lena sat down slowly, running her hand over the smooth wood. What exactly will I be doing? Managing my schedule, screening calls, organizing correspondence. Adrian pulled up a chair beside her. I travel frequently for business. When I'm gone, you'll handle things here. Make sure the staff has what they need, coordinate with contractors, deal with any issues that come up. That sounds like a lot of responsibility. It is. His eyes held hers. But I think you can handle it. He spent the next 3 hours walking her through everything. His calendar was a nightmare. Back-to-back meetings, conference calls, business dinners. His email inbox had over 1,000 unread messages. "How do you keep track of all this?" Lena asked, overwhelmed. "I don't," Adrian said wryly. "That's why I need you." By lunch, her head was spinning, but she was also excited, challenged. For the first time in years, someone was treating her like she had a brain. Over the next 2 weeks, Lena fell into a routine. She woke early, had breakfast with Mary in the kitchen, and spent her mornings in the study working through Adrian's schedule. Afternoons were for learning. He taught her about his business interests, his investments, the complex web of companies he owned or had stakes in. "You don't have to understand all of it," he said one day as they reviewed a contract. "You just need to know who to call when something goes wrong. And if I call the wrong person, then we'll fix it." He looked at her seriously. "I'm not expecting perfection, Lena. I'm expecting effort." She gave him both. The rest of the staff warmed to her quickly. Mary fed her constantly. Thomas taught her how to use the security system. The groundskeeper, an older man named Joe, showed her where the emergency generator was in case the power went out. "You're one of us now," Joe said gruffly. "That means we look out for you." Lena had never been part of an us before. It felt strange and wonderful. Adrian was gone frequently. Day trips to the city, overnight stays for meetings, once a full week in Europe for a business conference. But when he was home, they fell into an easy rhythm. Dinner together most nights. Conversations that stretched long after the food was gone. He told her about his work, his frustrations, the deals that fell through and the ones that paid off. And slowly, carefully, she told him about herself, about growing up in foster care, about her mother's death, about the series of terrible jobs and worse apartments that had led her to the Voss estate and Bercier estate in the first place. "I thought this was the best I could do," she admitted one night. "Work as a maid, save up, maybe get my own place eventually." "And now?" Adrian asked. "Now I don't know." Lena looked down at her hands. "It feels like a dream, like I'm going to wake up and be back out in the snow." "You're not." His voice was firm. "This is real. You earned this." "By almost dying?" "By surviving." Something shifted between them that night. A line crossed, invisible but undeniable. Lena started noticing things. The way Adrian's eyes followed her when she moved through a room, the way his voice softened when he said her name, the way he stood just a little too close when they worked side by side at the desk. And she noticed her own reactions, the way her pulse jumped when he entered a room, the way she found excuses to stay late in the study, the way she'd started dressing more carefully in the mornings, choosing sweaters that fit better, spending an extra minute on her hair. It was dangerous. He was her employer, her protector, the man who'd saved her life. Getting involved with him would be stupid, reckless. And yet, one night in late January, a storm rolled in. Not as bad as the blizzard, but bad enough. Wind rattling the windows, snow piling up against the doors. Adrian had been working late in his study, and Lena had stayed to help him finish a presentation for a meeting the next day. "I think that's everything," he said finally, sitting back. "Thank you." "No problem." Lena saved the file and closed the laptop. "I should let you get some sleep." She stood to leave, and he caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough. "Lena." She froze. He was standing now, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. His eyes were dark, intense, searching hers for something. "Yes?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Tell me to let go," he said quietly. "Tell me this is a bad idea." Her heart hammered. "Is it?" "Probably." His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist, and she felt the touch everywhere. "You work for me. You live in my house. There's a power imbalance. I should—" "Adrian." He stopped. "I'm not fragile," she said. "I'm not some helpless thing you need to protect from yourself. I know that. Do you?" She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Because I'm here by choice. I stay by choice. And if I wanted to leave, I would." His jaw tightened. "And do you? Want to leave?" "No." The word hung in the air between them. Adrian's control wavered. She could see it, the careful walls he'd built around himself cracking, just slightly. "This is a terrible idea," he said again, but his hand was still on her wrist, and he wasn't letting go. Probably, Lena agreed. And then she kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, her lips barely brushing his, but then his free hand came up to cup the back of her head, and the kiss deepened, turned into something hungry and desperate and absolutely inevitable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he murmured. "We should," Lena agreed. Neither of them moved. "I don't want to hurt you," Adrian said. Then don't." He pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes searching. "I have enemies, Lena, people who would use anyone close to me as leverage. If they knew about you, they already know about me." Lena's voice was steady. "I live here. I work for you. If someone wanted to hurt you through me, they could try whether we're together or not. That's not comforting." I'm not trying to comfort you." She took his hand, held it between both of hers. "I'm trying to tell you that I'm not afraid. And I'm not going anywhere." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, short and disbelieving. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he said. "Maybe both." He kissed her again, slower this time, and Lena felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like coming home. "This stays between us," Adrian said when they finally pulled apart. "For now, until I'm sure you're safe. Okay?" "I mean it, Lena. No one can know. Not the staff, not Thomas, not—" "I understand." She squeezed his hand. "I won't tell anyone." He nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. They didn't sleep together that night. Adrian walked her to her room, kissed her once more at the door, and left before either of them could change their minds. Lena lay in bed afterward, her lips still tingling, and wondered what she'd just started. Over the next few weeks, they were careful. In public, or as public as the mansion got, they were professional, employer and employee, nothing more. But in private, behind closed doors, they were something else entirely. Stolen kisses in the study after the staff had gone to bed. Long conversations curled up together on the couch in the library. Adrian's hand finding hers under the dinner table when no one was looking. It was terrifying and exhilarating and the most alive Lena had ever felt. "I've never done this before," she admitted one night as they lay together on the rug in front of the fireplace in his bedroom. "Never done what?" Adrian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "This. Us. Any of it." She turned to look at him. "I've never had someone look at me the way you do. And how do I look at you?" "Like I matter." Adrian's expression softened. He pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her temple. "You do matter," he said quietly. "More than you know." Lena closed her eyes and let herself believe it. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that nothing this good could last. And 3 days later, that voice was proven right. Lena was in the study sorting through the mail when Thomas appeared in the doorway. His face was grave. "Miss Carter," he said, "we have a problem." Lena's hand stilled on the envelope she'd been opening. Something in Thomas's tone made her pulse spike. "What kind of problem?" she asked. Thomas stepped into the study and closed the door behind him. "Margaret Hale has been seen in the city. She's been meeting with Vincent Kane." The name meant nothing to Lena, but clearly it should have. Thomas's expression had gone stone cold. "Who's Vincent Kane?" she asked. "Trouble." Thomas moved to the window, scanning the grounds with trained eyes. "He's a competitor of Mr. Voss's. They've been at war for the better part of 5 years over commercial real estate development downtown. Kane lost a very lucrative deal to Mr. Voss last year. Cost him something close to $20 million. Lena's stomach dropped. "And Margaret went to him?" 3 times in the last week. My contacts confirmed it this morning." Thomas turned back to her. "She's angry, desperate. And Kane has a reputation for exploiting exactly that kind of vulnerability. What could she possibly tell him that would matter?" Thomas's silence was answer enough. "She knows about the house, the staff, the routines, the security gaps. And if she'd been paying attention, which Margaret always was, she might know about Lena and Adrian too." "Where's Adrian?" Lena asked, standing. "In the city, meeting with his lawyers about the Riverside project." Thomas checked his watch. "He should be back by 6. Does he know about Margaret?" I called him 20 minutes ago. He's handling it. Thomas's voice was carefully neutral. In the meantime, he wants security increased around the estate. I've called in additional personnel. They'll be here within the hour. Lena nodded, trying to ignore the cold fear creeping up her spine. What do you need me to do? Stay inside, stay visible to staff. Don't go anywhere alone. Thomas met her eyes. And if you see anything unusual, anything at all, you find me immediately. Understood? Understood. Thomas left, and Lena stood in the study, her heart pounding. She tried to go back to sorting mail, but her hands were shaking too badly. Instead, she moved to the window and looked out at the snow-covered grounds. The estate suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a target. Adrian returned just after 6, striding through the front door with his phone pressed to his ear and fury written across every line of his body. Lena heard him from the study, his voice low and cold, as he issued orders to someone on the other end. I don't care what it costs. I want to know every move Kane makes, every call, every meeting, every goddamn breath. A pause. And find out exactly what Margaret told him. I want details. He ended the call and appeared in the study doorway. When he saw Lena, some of the tension in his shoulders eased. You're okay, he said. It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. I'm fine. Thomas told me what's happening. Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was tight, almost desperate, and Lena felt him breathing her in like he needed to confirm she was real. This is my fault, he said against her hair. I should have seen this coming. How could you have known Margaret would go to your enemies? Because that's what people do when they're cornered. Adrian pulled back enough to look at her. I took everything from her. Her job, her reputation, her future in this city. Of course she'd strike back. Then we deal with it, Lena said firmly. Together. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, pride maybe, or fear. I need you to understand something. Kane isn't like Margaret. He's dangerous, ruthless. If he thinks he can use you to get to me, he can't. Lena, he can't, she repeated, because I'm not going to give him the chance. Adrian studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Thomas is doubling security. You don't leave the estate without me or armed guards. You don't answer the door. You don't talk to anyone you don't know. Okay. I mean it. This isn't negotiable. I said okay. Lena took his face in her hands. I trust you, and I trust Thomas. We'll be careful. Adrian leaned into her touch, eyes closing briefly. I can't lose you. The words were barely a whisper, but they hit Lena like a physical blow. Because she heard what he wasn't saying, that he'd already lost people before, that he knew exactly how much it hurt. You won't, she promised. That night, 4 additional security personnel arrived. Thomas introduced them briefly. All former military, all vetted personally by Adrian. They took up positions around the estate, and suddenly the mansion felt less like a home and more like a fortress under siege. Lena tried to maintain normalcy. She worked through Adrian's schedule, answered emails, coordinated with the staff. But every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. Come here, he said that evening, pulling her away from the desk and toward the couch in his private sitting room. He sat and drew her down beside him, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Talk to me. I'm fine. Lena, she sighed. I keep thinking about what Margaret might have told Kane. About us. Even if she did, it doesn't change anything. Doesn't it? Lena turned to look at him. If Kane knows about me, if he knows I matter to you, then he already knew. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. You live in my house. You work for me. Anyone paying attention would assume you're important to me in some capacity. The exact nature of our relationship is irrelevant. Is it? Yes. He brushed a strand of hair back from her face. Because I'm not letting you go regardless of what Kane does or doesn't know. So he can threaten. He can scheme. He can throw everything he has at me. It won't change the outcome. Which is? He loses. Adrian said it with such quiet certainty that Lena almost believed him. Kane has been trying to destroy me for 5 years. He's failed every time. This won't be any different. Lena wanted to share his confidence, but she'd grown up with nothing, lost everything more than once. She knew how quickly the world could take away the things you loved. "What if—" she started. Adrian kissed her, slow and deep and thorough enough that the words died in her throat. "No what ifs," he said when they broke apart. "We deal with what is. And what is right now is that you're safe. I'm here. And Kane can go to hell." Despite everything, Lena smiled. "Has anyone ever told you you're incredibly arrogant?" "Frequently." His mouth quirked. "It's part of my charm." "Is that what we're calling it?" He kissed her again, and for a little while Lena let herself forget about Margaret and Kane and the danger gathering outside their walls. The next morning, Thomas brought news. "Kane's planning something," he said, standing in Adrian's study with his arms crossed. "My sources say he's been meeting with contractors, security firms, people who used to work for you." "Building a team," Adrian said grimly. "For what?" Lena asked. Thomas and Adrian exchanged a look. "For whatever he thinks will hurt Adrian most," Thomas said carefully. "Could be business sabotage. Could be something more direct." "An attack," Lena said flatly. "You think he's going to attack the estate?" "It's possible." Adrian stood and moved to the window. "The question is when and how." "We've reinforced all entry points," Thomas said. "Camera coverage is complete. Motion sensors on the grounds. Anyone tries to breach the perimeter, we'll know." "Good." Adrian turned back. "What about Margaret?" "Still in the city. She's staying at a hotel downtown. Kane's paying for it." Thomas's expression darkened. "She's been seen at several bars, drinking heavily, talking to anyone who'll listen about how you destroyed her life." "Let her talk." Adrian's voice was ice. "Words can't hurt me." But they could hurt his reputation, Lena thought. They could plant seeds of doubt in business partners, investors, anyone who mattered in Adrian's world. As if reading her mind, Thomas said, "Some of the stories are gaining traction. There's been talk, questions about your management style, how you treat employees." Adrian laughed, short and bitter. "Of course there is. Kane's smart enough to know he can't beat me in a straight fight, so he goes for reputation instead." "Do we respond?" Thomas asked. "No. Responding gives the stories legitimacy." Adrian moved back to his desk. "We stay focused on the real threat. Kane's not building a PR campaign just for fun. He's laying groundwork for something bigger." Thomas nodded. "I'll keep digging." After he left, Lena looked at Adrian. "You're worried." "I'm prepared." He met her eyes. "There's a difference." "What can I do?" "Stay safe. That's all I need." But Lena was tired of being protected, tired of feeling helpless. "Teach me," she said suddenly. Adrian frowned. "Teach you what?" "How to defend myself, how to shoot, how to fight, whatever I need to know to not be a liability." "You're not a liability. I'm a target." Lena stood and moved toward him. "You said it yourself. Kane could use me to get to you. So teach me how to make sure that doesn't happen." Adrian studied her for a long moment. "It's not that simple." "I know, but I'd rather try and fail than sit here waiting to be rescued." She held his gaze. "Please." He sighed. "Thomas can teach you basic self-defense. But Lena, if something happens, if Kane's people get past our security, I'll run, I'll hide, I'll call for help." She touched his hand. "But I want to know I have options, even if I never use them." Adrian nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll talk to Thomas." True to his word, Thomas started training Lena the next day. They used the estate's gym, and for 2 hours every morning he taught her how to break holds, where to strike to cause maximum damage, how to use everyday objects as weapons. "You're not trying to win a fight," Thomas said as she practiced elbow strikes on a pad. "You're trying to create an opening to escape. Hit hard, hit fast, and run." Lena absorbed everything like her life depended on it, because it might. In the afternoons, she went to the firing range Adrian had built in the estate's basement. Thomas taught her how to hold a gun, how to aim, how to breathe through the recoil. "Don't overthink it," he said. "Point, breathe, squeeze. The gun does the rest." She was terrible at first. Her hands shook. She flinched at the sound. But gradually, with practice, she got better. "Not bad," Thomas said, after she put 3 shots in the center mass of a target. "Keep practicing." Adrian watched sometimes, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and an unreadable expression. Lena couldn't tell if he was proud or terrified. Maybe both. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The security stayed tight. Kane made no moves. Margaret continued drinking and talking, but nothing materialized. Lena started to wonder if maybe they'd overreacted, if maybe Kane was all threat and no action. Then, on a Tuesday night in late February, everything went to hell. Lena was in the library, curled up with a book, when the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, just died. The entire estate plunged into darkness. Her heart hammered. She stood slowly, straining to hear over the sudden silence. The heating system had stopped. The subtle hum of electronics was gone. Then, footsteps. Fast and heavy, coming from somewhere in the house. "Lena!" Thomas's voice, sharp and urgent. "Stay where you are!" She froze. More footsteps. Shouting. The sound of glass breaking somewhere upstairs. Lena's training kicked in. She moved away from the windows toward the corner of the room where shadows were deepest. Her phone was in her pocket. She pulled it out, hands shaking, and tried to call Adrian. No signal. Of course not. Whatever had killed the power had probably killed the cell tower too. Or they were jamming it. The door to the library burst open. Thomas stood there, backlit by emergency lighting from the hallway. "We need to move, now." "What's happening?" "Breach. Multiple points." He grabbed her arm. "Kane's people are inside." Terror flooded through her, but she didn't freeze. She moved. Thomas led her through the dark hallways at a run. Behind them, she could hear gunfire, sharp cracks that made her flinch. "Where's Adrian?" she gasped. "On his way from the city, 20 minutes out." Thomas yanked her around a corner. "We're getting you to the safe room." Lena had never been to the safe room, didn't even know the estate had one. But Thomas clearly did. He led her down a narrow staircase she'd never noticed, through a hidden door behind a bookshelf, into a concrete bunker beneath the house. The space was small but well stocked. Water, food, medical supplies. A bank of monitors showing security feeds from around the estate. On the screens, Lena could see dark figures moving through the mansion. 6, no, 8, all armed. "Oh my God," she whispered. Thomas locked the door behind them, thick steel that looked like it could withstand a tank. "You stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except me or Mr. Voss." "Where are you going?" "To do my job." He handed her a gun, the same model she'd been practicing with. "You remember what I taught you?" Lena's hands shook as she took the weapon. "Point, breathe, squeeze." "Good girl." Thomas moved back toward the door. 15 minutes. Mr. Voss will be here in 15 minutes. Just hold on." He left before she could protest. The door sealed with a hiss, and Lena was alone. She sank into a chair in front of the monitors, gun clutched in both hands, and watched the attack unfold on screen. Thomas and the other security personnel moved through the house like ghosts, taking down Kane's people one by one. But there were so many, and they were organized, professional. This wasn't random violence. This was a coordinated assault. On one screen, she saw 2 men drag Mary out of the kitchen, saw her struggling, screaming, saw them hit her hard enough that she went limp. Lena's vision went red. She stood, moving toward the door before she could think better of it. But Thomas's voice echoed in her head. "Don't open this door for anyone." She forced herself to sit back down, forced herself to watch. On another monitor, she saw Joe, the groundskeeper, bleeding from a head wound but still fighting. Saw him take down one of Kane's men with a shovel before 3 more overwhelmed him. Her staff. Her people. Being hurt because of her. The guilt was crushing. Then, movement on the main entrance camera. A black SUV screeched to a stop in the circular drive, and Adrian burst out before it had fully stopped moving. He was armed. So were the 4 men with him. They moved into the house like a storm, and suddenly Kane's people were the ones on the defensive. Lena watched Adrian fight, efficient, brutal, terrifying in his precision. He didn't hesitate, didn't show mercy, just moved through the house eliminating threats with cold, calculated rage. This was the man Margaret had tried to destroy. This was the man Kane had declared war on. And Lena understood, watching him, that he would burn the world down before he let anyone hurt what was his. The fight was over in minutes. Kane's people, those who were still conscious, were zip-tied and left for the police. The ones who weren't conscious were dragged outside and dumped in the snow. Then Adrian was moving, searching, and Lena saw him on the monitors heading straight for the hidden staircase. She heard footsteps outside the safe room door. Lena! Adrian's voice rough with fear. Open the door! She fumbled with the lock and yanked it open. Adrian stood there, blood on his knuckles, his shirt torn, eyes wild. And when he saw her, whole and unhurt, something in his expression cracked. He pulled her into his arms so hard she could barely breathe. I thought... His voice broke. When Thomas called, I thought, I'm okay. Lena held him just as tightly. I'm okay. They stood like that for a long moment, neither willing to let go. Finally, Adrian pulled back enough to look at her. Did anyone hurt you? No. Thomas got me down here before they breached the main house. Lena's hands were still shaking. But the staff, Mary and Joe, are alive. Injured, but alive. Adrian's jaw tightened. Ambulances are on the way. And Kane's people? In custody. The police are upstairs taking statements. His eyes went hard. They'll talk. And when they do, Kane is finished. Lena believed him. Over the next several hours, the estate transformed into a crime scene. Police swarmed through the halls. Paramedics treated injuries. Investigators photographed evidence. Adrian gave his statement with cold precision, and Lena watched him operate. The consummate professional, offering just enough cooperation to seem helpful while revealing nothing that could be used against him. When the police finally left, taking Kane's people with them, Adrian stood in the destroyed foyer and looked around at the shattered glass, the bullet holes in the walls, the blood on the marble floors. Rebuild it, he told Thomas. All of it. Better than before. Thomas nodded. Yes, sir. Adrian turned to Lena. Pack a bag. Enough for a week. She blinked. What? Why? Because you're leaving. The words hit her like a slap. What are you talking about? Kane knows where you are. He knows you matter to me. As long as you're here, you're a target. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. I'm sending you somewhere safe. No. Lena stepped forward. No, I'm not leaving you. This isn't a discussion. The hell it isn't. She grabbed his arm. You don't get to make this decision for me. I'm trying to protect you. I don't want protection. Lena's voice rose. I want to be here, with you, fighting this together. And I want you alive. Adrian's control shattered. Do you understand what I felt when Thomas called? When I thought I might get here and find you? He stopped, breathing hard. I can't go through that again. I can't. Lena's anger drained away. She saw it then, the fear underneath the rage, the terror of losing someone he loved, because that's what this was. Love. Adrian, she said softly, look at me. He did, and his eyes were raw. I'm not going anywhere, Lena said. You can send me away if you want, but I'll just come back, because this is where I belong. Lena, I love you. The words came out steady and sure. I love you, and I'm not running. Not from Kane, not from the danger, not from any of it. Adrian stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. Then he kissed her, hard and desperate and full of everything he couldn't say. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. If I lose you, he whispered, you won't. Promise me. I promise. It was a promise she had no way of keeping, but she made it anyway. Adrian didn't try to force her to leave that night. Instead, he held her while the police finished their work, while Thomas coordinated the cleanup, while the staff who'd been injured were loaded into ambulances. He held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just tried to collapse around him. When the last police car finally pulled away, leaving nothing but red and blue shadows fading into the snow, Adrian led Lena upstairs. Not to her room, to his. They didn't speak. Words felt too small for what had just happened, for what they'd just survived. He stripped off his torn, bloodied shirt while she sat on the edge of his bed and watched him with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. You should sleep, he said, his back to her as he washed the blood from his hands in the bathroom sink. So should you. I will. Eventually. He dried his hands and leaned against the doorframe, studying her. But first I need to make sure you're really here. Really safe. Lena stood and crossed to him. She took his face in her hands and made him look at her. I'm here. I'm safe. And I'm not going anywhere. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, and she felt him trembling. This man who'd just fought his way through 8 armed intruders without flinching was shaking in her arms. "I've lost people before," Adrian said quietly. "People I cared about. People I was supposed to protect." Lena's heart clenched. "Who?" "My sister." The words came out rough. "Elena. She was younger than me by 3 years. After our father kicked me out, she stayed. Tried to keep the peace. Tried to survive." He pulled back enough to meet Lena's eyes. "When I finally got her out, when I had enough money to give her a real life, she was killed in a car accident 6 months later. Drunk driver. Wrong place, wrong time. Adrian, I couldn't save her, couldn't protect her. And for years I told myself it was better not to care about anyone that much again. It's safer." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Then you almost died in my driveway, and I carried you inside, and something in me recognized you, like my soul knew yours before my mind caught up." Tears burned behind Lena's eyes. "I feel it too." "I know." He kissed her forehead. "That's why I'm terrified. Because caring this much about someone means they can destroy you just by ceasing to exist." "Then we make sure I keep existing," Lena said fiercely. "We fight, together. No more trying to send me away for my own good." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "You're incredibly stubborn." "I learned from the best." This time, when he kissed her, it was different, slower, deeper, full of promises neither of them was sure they could keep, but were determined to try. They fell into bed together, and for a few hours the rest of the world ceased to matter. There was only skin and breath and the desperate need to feel alive after coming so close to death. When Lena finally drifted off, Adrian stayed awake, watching her sleep in the dim light from the fireplace, memorizing every detail like he might lose her if he looked away. Morning came too soon. Lena woke to find Adrian already dressed, on the phone in his sitting room, his voice low and dangerous. "I want every connection traced, every bank account frozen, every business partner contacted." A pause. "I don't care if it's legal. I care if it's effective." Lena sat up, pulling the sheet around herself, and caught his eye through the doorway. His expression softened fractionally when he saw her awake. "Handle it," he said into the phone and hung up. "Kane?" Lena asked. Adrian nodded, moving back into the bedroom. "His people started talking around 3 this morning. Gave up everything. Who hired them, how much they were paid, what the target was." "And what was the target?" "You, specifically." Adrian's jaw tightened. "The plan was to take you alive, use you as leverage to force me into surrendering business interests. Kane wanted the Riverside development. Thought if he had you, I'd give it to him." Lena's stomach turned. "Would you have?" Without hesitation, Adrian sat on the edge of the bed. "Which is exactly why you can't stay here. We already had this conversation, and I'm having it again, in daylight, when you've had time to think." He took her hand. "Kane failed last night, but he won't stop. He's desperate now, cornered. That makes him more dangerous, not less." "Then we end him," Lena said flatly. "Whatever it takes." Adrian studied her face. "You understand what you're saying." "I'm saying I'm done being a victim, done waiting for the next attack." She squeezed his hand. "You have the evidence to destroy him, so do it." "It's not that simple. Kane has connections, lawyers, money. So do you." A slow smile spread across Adrian's face, dark and predatory. "Yes, I do." Over breakfast, Adrian laid out his plan. Thomas joined them, along with a thin man in an expensive suit who was introduced as Adrian's lead attorney. "We have Kane on conspiracy to commit kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder," the lawyer said, spreading documents across the table. "His men's testimony is damning, but Kane will claim he had no knowledge of what his people were doing, that they acted independently." "Then we prove he knew," Adrian said. "Financial records, communications, whatever it takes." "That will take time. Weeks, maybe months." "We don't have months." Adrian's voice went cold. "Kane will run the moment he realizes his men talked. We need to move faster." Thomas cleared his throat. "There might be another way." Everyone looked at him. "Kane's business is built on reputation and fear," Thomas continued. "He's not as wealthy as you, sir, not as connected. What he has is a network of people who believe he's untouchable, that he always wins. So we prove he's not untouchable, Lena said slowly. We make him look weak. Thomas nodded. Exactly. We leak the story to the press. Not just about the attack, about everything. His failed deals, his debts, the fact that his own men turned on him the moment they were caught. Adrian considered this. It would destroy him financially. No one will work with someone who can't control his own people. And while his empire crumbles, we move in legally, the lawyer added. Civil suits for damages, criminal charges. By the time we're done, Kane won't have the resources to fight back. He'll retaliate, Adrian said. Let him try. Thomas's expression was grim. We'll be ready. Adrian looked at Lena. This gets ugly. Public. Your name will come out. People will know you matter to me. They already know, Lena said. Kane knew. Margaret knew. We're past the point of keeping secrets. Lena, I'm not afraid of people knowing I love you. She held his gaze. Are you afraid of them knowing you love me? The room went silent. Thomas and the lawyer suddenly found the documents in front of them very interesting. Adrian's eyes never left Lena's face. No, I'm not afraid of that. Then we do this, together, out in the open. Adrian nodded slowly. All right. Thomas, contact your media sources. I want the story out by tonight. Full details. Nothing held back. Yes, sir. And get me a meeting with Kane, face to face. Thomas frowned. Sir, that's not a request. Adrian stood. If he wants a war, I'll give him one. But he's going to look me in the eye when I end him. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon at a neutral location, a private club downtown where both men held memberships. Adrian insisted Lena stay at the estate, surrounded by security, but she insisted just as hard on coming with him. If I'm the reason he tried to destroy you, she said, then I deserve to be there when you destroy him back. Adrian didn't look happy about it, but he didn't argue. They arrived at the club with Thomas and 4 armed guards. Kane was already there, sitting in a leather wingback chair by the fireplace like he owned the place. He was younger than Lena expected. Early 40s, handsome in a sharp-edged way, with cold blue eyes and the kind of smile that didn't reach past his teeth. Margaret sat beside him. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Adrian placed a hand on the small of her back, steadying, protective, and led her into the room. Vincent, Adrian said coolly. Margaret, how cozy. Kane stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Adrian, I was surprised to get your call. After the unfortunate incident last night. Incident? Adrian's voice could have cut glass. Is that what we're calling armed assault now? I have no idea what you're referring to. Kane's expression was all innocence. Though I did hear there was some excitement at your estate. Terrible thing, home invasions. You really should invest in better security. I have excellent security. It's how we caught all 8 of your men before they could finish what you hired them to do. Kane's smile didn't waver. You have proof of this accusation, I assume. Video footage, financial records, signed confessions. Adrian stepped closer. Your people gave you up the moment they realized they'd failed. Told us everything, how much you paid them, what you wanted them to do, where you planned to hold Lena once they took her. For the first time, Kane's composure cracked. His eyes flicked to Lena, then back to Adrian. If you had actual evidence, you'd have gone to the police. Who do you think gave the police their evidence? Adrian smiled, cold and sharp. Right now, there's a warrant being prepared for your arrest. Should be ready by tomorrow morning. Kane's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Adrian pulled out his phone and turned it so Kane could see the screen. That's a text from my attorney. The DA is very interested in your activities, Vincent. Turns out conspiracy to commit kidnapping carries a sentence of 20 to life. The color drained from Kane's face. Margaret stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You have no proof that Vincent was involved in anything. Sit down, Margaret, Adrian said without looking at her. You've already destroyed your life. Don't make it worse by lying for him. I'm not lying. Vincent had nothing to do with... You went to him with information about my household, about Lena, about our security protocols. Adrian's voice was ice. You gave him everything he needed to plan the attack. That makes you an accessory. Margaret's face went white. She looked at Kane, who was staring at Adrian with barely concealed rage. You think you've won, Kane said quietly. You think you can destroy me with lawyers and testimony, but you're forgetting something, Adrian. What's that? I have nothing left to lose. Kane's smile turned vicious, which means I can do things you can't, cross lines you won't. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Kane's eyes cut to Lena. You care about her. That's your weakness. And I will exploit it until you give me what I want. Adrian moved so fast Lena barely saw it. One moment he was standing beside her. The next he had Kane slammed against the wall, forearm across his throat. Listen very carefully, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. You will never threaten her again. You will never speak her name. You will never even think about her. Because if you do, if you so much as look in her direction, I will make sure you spend the rest of your miserable life in a cell so small you'll forget what daylight looks like. Kane struggled, but Adrian's grip didn't loosen. You're finished, Vincent. Your business is gone. Your reputation is destroyed. And by tomorrow, you'll be in custody. Adrian leaned closer. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn yourself in. You're going to plead guilty. And you're going to do it quietly, without involving anyone else. And if I don't, then I release everything I have to the media. Every dirty deal, every bribed official, every skeleton in your closet. Adrian's smile was terrifying. I'll make sure you don't just go to prison, Vincent. I'll make sure you go there as a pariah. That everyone you ever hurt gets their pound of flesh. That you die alone and forgotten. He released Kane, who stumbled back, gasping. Your choice, Adrian said. Easy way or hard way? Kane straightened his jacket, his hands shaking with rage. You'll regret this. I doubt it. Adrian turned and walked away, taking Lena's hand as he passed. Thomas and the guards fell into formation around them. As they reached the door, Margaret called out, Lena! Lena stopped, looking back despite herself. Margaret stood there, looking small and broken, all her vicious confidence gone. I'm sorry, she said hoarsely. I didn't think he'd actually— Yes, you did, Lena said quietly. You wanted me to suffer. You just didn't think you'd suffer too. She turned and left without waiting for a response. In the car on the way back to the estate, Lena sat in silence, processing everything that had just happened. Adrian held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You were right, he said finally, about doing this together. I wouldn't have had the strength to walk away without finishing him if you hadn't been there. You didn't need me for that. You have incredible self-control. Not where you're concerned. Adrian brought her hand to his lips. If he'd actually hurt you, if his people had succeeded, but they didn't. This time. His eyes were dark. Kane was right about one thing. Caring about you is my weakness. Any enemy smart enough to figure that out could use it against me. Then we make sure I'm not a weakness, Lena said. We make me a strength. Adrian studied her. What do you mean? I mean, I stop hiding behind your protection. I learn everything you know, how your business works, who your enemies are, how to defend myself when you're not there. She squeezed his hand. I become a partner, not a liability. You're already a partner. In private, maybe, but not in your world, not in the parts that matter for survival. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, starting tomorrow, you learn everything. No more protection, full transparency. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might hate what you see. Lena smiled faintly. I know exactly what you are, Adrian Voss. I've known since the day you fired Margaret. You're ruthless and dangerous, and you destroy anyone who threatens what's yours. She leaned closer. And I love you anyway. His kiss was answer enough. The story hit the news that evening. Every major outlet carried it. The attack on the Voss estate, the arrests, the connections to Vincent Kane. By morning, Kane's business partners were distancing themselves. His investors were pulling out. His properties were being seized. Adrian had destroyed him in less than 24 hours. Kane turned himself in that afternoon, just as Adrian had demanded. The charges were extensive: conspiracy, assault, attempted kidnapping. With the evidence Adrian had provided, the DA was confident in getting a conviction. Margaret was arrested separately, charged as an accessory. Her bail was set impossibly high. They'll both go to prison, Adrian told Lena that night as they sat in his study watching the news coverage. Kane for 20 years minimum, Margaret for 10. Do you feel satisfied? Lena asked. Adrian considered the question. No. Satisfaction would require they'd never threatened you in the first place. He looked at her. But I feel secure, like the threat is neutralized. And the next threat? We'll handle that too, together. But even as he said it, Lena saw the worry in his eyes, the fear that there would always be a next threat, that as long as she stayed with him, she'd be a target. That night, after Adrian fell asleep, Lena lay awake thinking. She loved him. She knew that with absolute certainty. But she also knew that loving him meant accepting a life of constant danger, of looking over her shoulder, of knowing that someone, somewhere, would always be trying to use her to hurt him. The question was whether she was strong enough for that life. By morning, she had her answer. She found Adrian in his study, already on the phone, already working. When he saw her in the doorway, he ended the call immediately. You're up early, he said. Couldn't sleep. Lena came in and closed the door behind her. We need to talk. Something in her tone made Adrian tense. All right. She sat across from him, took a breath and said, I can't stay here. The color drained from his face. What? Not forever. Just for a while. Lena leaned forward. Kane is gone, but you were right. There will be others, and as long as I'm here, as long as everyone knows I matter to you, I'm a target. Lena, I'm not running away. I'm not leaving you. She reached across the desk and took his hand. But I need time. Time to learn, to train, to become someone who can actually stand beside you instead of behind you. Someone who doesn't need constant protection. Where would you go? Thomas has a sister who runs a private security firm overseas. He offered to contact her. I could train there. Really train. Not just self-defense, but everything. Tactics, weapons, threat assessment. Adrian's grip on her hand tightened. For how long? 6 months, maybe a year. A year. The word came out strangled. I know it's a long time. I know it's asking a lot. Lena's eyes burned with unshed tears. But I can't be the reason you hold back. The reason you can't do what you need to do because you're worried about protecting me. I need to be able to protect myself. Adrian stood abruptly and moved to the window, his back to her. For a long moment, he said nothing. You're right, he finally said, his voice rough. I hate it, but you're right. Lena stood and crossed to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. I love you. That doesn't change just because I'm not here. I know. He turned in her embrace and pulled her close. But I don't have to like it. No, you don't. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other, both trying to memorize the moment before everything changed. 2 days later, Lena stood in the foyer with a single suitcase, Thomas beside her, and Adrian looking like he was watching his world end. Call me every day, he said. I will. And if anything happens, anything, you call me immediately. I promise. And his voice broke slightly. Come back to me. Lena cupped his face in her hands. Nothing could keep me away. She kissed him one last time, deep and desperate and full of all the words they couldn't say. Then she got in the car and didn't look back, because if she did, she'd never leave. As the estate disappeared behind them, Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not grief, though there was that. Not fear, though there was that. Not fear, though there was that too. But determination. She was going to become someone worthy of the life Adrian had offered her. Someone strong enough to stand beside him in the darkness and not flinch. Someone who could survive whatever came next. And then she was going to come back and claim the future they both deserved. The training facility was in Scotland, a converted estate on the coast where wind came off the North Sea like knives, and the rain never seemed to stop. Thomas's sister, a former MI6 operative named Charlotte, ran the operation with military precision and zero tolerance for weakness. You're here to become dangerous, Charlotte said on Lena's first day, standing in the center of a mat in the facility's gym. She was 50, lean as a whip, with gray-streaked hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing. Not just competent, not just capable, dangerous. The kind of person who walks into a room and changes the equation just by being there. Lena, exhausted from the overnight flight and already homesick for Adrian, nodded. I'm ready. We'll see. The first month nearly broke her. Charlotte pushed her harder than anyone ever had. 5 a.m. runs along the cliffs, hand-to-hand combat training until her muscles screamed, weapons practice until her hands blistered and bled. They taught her how to kill with a knife, a gun, her bare hands, how to spot a tail, how to disappear in a crowd, how to read a room in 3 seconds and identify every exit, every weapon, every threat. At night, alone in her small room with its single window overlooking the sea, Lena called Adrian. I miss you, she said into the phone, her voice raw with exhaustion. I miss you too. His voice was warm despite the distance. How's it going? Charlotte says I'm improving. I think that's her version of high praise. Adrian's soft laugh made her chest ache. Probably, Charlotte doesn't give compliments lightly. How are things there? Any new threats? Nothing I can't handle. Thomas has everything locked down tight. A pause. Though the house feels empty without you. It's only been a month. Feels longer. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Adrian told her about his business deals, the new development project, Mary's attempts to feed him properly in Lena's absence. Lena told him about her training, the other women in the program, the cold that seeped into her bones no matter how many layers she wore. When they finally said goodnight, Lena lay in the dark and counted the days until she could go home. 234 to go. By the third month, something shifted. Lena's body had adapted, grown stronger, leaner. Her reflexes sharpened. She stopped hesitating before striking, started anticipating attacks before they came. Charlotte noticed. You're thinking like a fighter, now, she said after Lena successfully defended against 3 attackers in a simulation. Not just reacting, planning. Is that good? It's progress. Charlotte's expression was almost approving. But you're still holding back. What do you mean? You're afraid of your own capacity for violence. Charlotte handed her a towel. You need to make peace with what you're capable of. Because the moment you hesitate in a real fight, you're dead. That night, Lena thought about what Charlotte had said, about the night Kane's people had invaded the estate, about how she'd wanted to rush out of that safe room and fight, but fear had held her back. She never wanted to feel that helpless again. The next day in training, when Charlotte attacked, Lena didn't hold back. She struck hard, fast, brutal, and saw surprise flash across Charlotte's face before the older woman countered. They fought for 20 minutes straight, neither giving quarter, until Charlotte finally called a halt. There you are, Charlotte said, breathing hard. That's the version of you that survives. Adrian called that evening like he always did. You sound different, he said. Different how? Stronger, more certain. His voice was quiet. I'm proud of you. Lena's throat tightened. I'm doing this for us, so I can come back and actually be your equal. You've always been my equal, Lena. You just didn't know it yet. By month 6, Lena had completed the combat training and moved into threat assessment and strategic planning. She learned how to analyze business deals for hidden dangers, how to read people's intentions from their body language, how to build security protocols from the ground up. Charlotte brought in guest instructors, former intelligence officers, corporate security experts, people who'd spent their lives in the shadows. Each one taught Lena something new. You understand that being with Adrian Voss means you'll always be a target, one instructor said during a session on protective intelligence. The question is whether you can turn that from a liability into an asset. How? By becoming so formidable that attacking you becomes more trouble than it's worth. The instructor smiled grimly. By making people fear you as much as they fear him. Lena absorbed it all like a sponge, driven by the memory of Adrian's face as she'd left, the promise she'd made to come back stronger. She called him every night without fail, and he told her about his world, the deals, the threats, the constant chess game of business and power. And she started offering advice, insights she'd learned from her training, and watched as he began to see her not just as the woman he loved, but as a genuine strategic partner. You're right about Morrison, Adrian said one night after Lena had analyzed a potential business partner's background. His financials don't add up. I'm pulling out of the deal. Good. He would have betrayed you within 6 months. How did you know? Charlotte taught me how to read patterns. Morrison's entire career is built on short-term gains and abandoned partnerships. He's a user. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I need you back here. Not just because I miss you, which I do, desperately, but because you see things I don't. 2 more months, Lena said. I'm almost done. I'm counting the days. So am I. In month 8, everything changed. Charlotte called Lena into her office after a routine training session. Her expression was grave. Thomas contacted me this morning, she said without preamble. There's been a development. Lena's heart stuttered. Is Adrian okay? He's fine, but Vincent Kane escaped from prison transport 2 days ago. The world tilted. Lena gripped the edge of Charlotte's desk. What? He had help. Someone on the inside facilitated it. Guards were paid off. Security footage was corrupted. He's in the wind. Charlotte's eyes were hard. Thomas thinks he's coming for you. How would he even know where I am? Kane has resources, friends in dark places. If he's determined enough, and Thomas believes he is, he'll find you. Charlotte stood. We're going into lockdown protocols. No one in or out until we know more. But Lena was already shaking her head. No, if Kane is out there, if he's hunting me, then I'm leading him straight to Adrian. Adrian has security. It wasn't enough last time. Lena's voice was steel. And if Kane is desperate enough to break out of prison, he won't stop until one of us is dead. I need to go back. That's exactly what he wants. You exposed, vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable anymore. Lena met Charlotte's eyes. You made sure of that. And I'm done running. Done hiding. If Kane wants a war, I'll give him one. Charlotte studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Thomas said you'd say that. He's already arranged transport. You leave in 2 hours. Lena called Adrian immediately. I heard, he said before she could speak. Thomas told me. And before you ask, yes, I want you back here. I want you where I can protect you. I'm not coming back to be protected, Lena said. I'm coming back to fight. She heard his sharp inhale. Lena, Kane made a mistake breaking out. He had a chance to serve his time and maybe rebuild some kind of life, but he chose this. He chose to come after us. Her voice was cold, certain. So we end it, permanently. Do you understand what you're saying? Yes. And she did. She understood that the girl who'd begged Margaret Hale for mercy was gone, replaced by someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. Someone who would do whatever it took to protect the life she and Adrian were building. Then come home, Adrian said quietly, and we'll finish this together. The flight back felt both endless and too short. Lena spent it reviewing everything Charlotte had taught her, running scenarios, planning. By the time the plane touched down, she had a strategy. Thomas was waiting at the private airfield with an armed escort. When Lena descended the stairs, he actually smiled. You look different, he said. I am different. Lena embraced him briefly. Where's Adrian? At the estate. He wanted to come, but I convinced him it was safer to stay behind our defenses. Good call. Lena climbed into the armored SUV. What's our intelligence on Kane? Limited. He's gone to ground, but we know he's still in the country, probably building resources, gathering allies. Thomas pulled out a tablet. We've got facial recognition running at every airport, train station, and border crossing. The moment he surfaces, we'll know. He won't surface. He's smarter than that. Lena studied the security briefing on the screen. He'll come for the estate directly. It's personal now. We've tripled the guard, new surveillance systems. The whole property is a fortress. It was a fortress last time, too. He still got in. Thomas's jaw tightened. What are you suggesting? That we don't wait for him to come to us. Lena looked up. We draw him out, on our terms. By the time they reached the estate, Lena had outlined her plan. Thomas listened without interrupting, his expression growing more thoughtful. It's risky, he said finally. If it fails, it won't fail. Because Kane's weakness is his ego. He thinks I'm still that terrified girl from the blizzard. He doesn't know what I've become. The gates opened, and the mansion came into view. Snow covered the grounds, just like that first night. But everything else was different. Lena was different. Adrian was waiting at the front door. When Lena stepped out of the car, They simply stared at each other for a moment. Then he crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You came back," he said against her hair. "I promised I would." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes widened slightly. She knew what he was seeing. 8 months of training had transformed her. She was leaner, harder, moved with a predator's grace. "You're—" He seemed to struggle for words. "What you needed," Lena finished. "What we both needed." Adrian cupped her face in his hands. "I need you safe. That's all I've ever needed." "Then let me help keep us both safe." She took his hand. "I have a plan to end Kane, but I need you to trust me." They went inside into the study that had become familiar ground, and Lena laid out her strategy. Adrian listened, his expression growing darker. "Absolutely not," he said when she finished. "You're suggesting using yourself as bait. That's not happening." "It's the only way to draw him out. I don't care, I just got you back. I'm not risking you." "Adrian." Lena moved closer, took both his hands in hers. 8 months ago, you would have been right. 8 months ago, I was a liability. But I'm not anymore. Charlotte trained me. I can handle this. Charlotte isn't here. I am. And I'm telling you, it's too dangerous. Everything about our life is dangerous. Lena's voice rose. That's what I learned while I was gone. That as long as we're together, there will always be threats. Always be people trying to use me against you or you against me. So we can either hide from that reality or we can face it head on. There has to be another way. There isn't. Kane is desperate, which makes him reckless. But he's not stupid. The only thing that will make him break cover is the chance to finish what he started. She squeezed his hands. Trust me. Trust what I've become. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he closed his eyes and nodded. Tell me the plan, he said. All of it. They spent the next 3 days preparing. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Leak information that Lena was staying at a safe house in the city, less protected than the estate. Make it look like a mistake, like someone in Adrian's organization had talked when they shouldn't have. Kane would see the opportunity and take it. And when he did, they'd be ready. Thomas hated the plan almost as much as Adrian did, but he helped execute it flawlessly. The safe house was real. A brownstone in an upscale neighborhood with security that looked formidable but had carefully planned weaknesses. Enough to make Kane think he could get in. Lena moved in with a small security detail. Adrian stayed at the estate, publicly visible, creating the illusion of separation. But beneath the safe house, in a basement converted into a command center, Adrian watched every camera feed, listened to every communication, and hidden throughout the building were 24 of Thomas's best operatives waiting. He'll come at night, Lena said into her concealed earpiece as she moved through the brownstone, checking sightlines. Probably between 2 and 4 a.m. That's when we're statistically most vulnerable. Copy that, Thomas's voice came back. All teams in position. Adrian said nothing, but Lena could feel his tension through the comms. The first night, nothing happened. The second night was the same. On the third night at 2:47 a.m., the perimeter alarms were triggered. We have movement, Thomas said quietly. East side, 3 contacts. Lena was already moving, gun in hand, to her predetermined position. The lights in the brownstone were dim, creating shadows for Kane's people to hide in, and for Thomas's operatives to use against them. Glass shattered downstairs. Footsteps, careful and quiet. Lena's heart pounded, but her hands were steady. All those months of training, all those hours of practice had built to this moment. 4 contacts now, Thomas updated. They're spreading out. Professional formation. But where was Kane? He wouldn't send his people in without being close enough to capitalize on success. Lena moved to the window and looked out at the street. There, a black sedan, idling 2 buildings down, and in the back seat, barely visible in the streetlight, a familiar sharp-edged profile. Found him, she said quietly. Outside in the sedan. He's watching. Do we take him now? Thomas asked. No. Let his people come to me first. I want him to think it's working. Adrian's voice cut in, tight with fear and fury. Lena! Trust me, she said. The footsteps grew closer. Lena positioned herself in the bedroom, exactly where Kane would expect to find her sleeping. But she wasn't in the bed. She was behind the door, weapon ready, breathing controlled. The door opened slowly. A man entered, tall, armed, moving with tactical precision. He swept the room, saw the shape in the bed that Lena had carefully arranged with pillows, and moved toward it. Lena struck from behind, fast and brutal, exactly as Charlotte had taught her. The man went down without a sound. "One down," she said quietly. "Two more on the stairs," Thomas reported. "Approaching your position." Lena was already moving, using the shadows, silent as smoke. When the next man entered, she took him down the same way. Then the third. "All three down," she said. "No shots fired. Kane shouldn't know yet." "He's getting out of the car," one of Thomas's street operatives reported, "moving toward the building." Perfect. Lena positioned herself in the darkened hallway, weapon aimed at the front entrance. Around her, invisible in the shadows, Thomas's team waited. The front door opened. Vincent Kane stepped inside, gun drawn, confidence in every line of his body. He thought he'd won, thought his people had cleared the way. Lena stepped into the light. Kane froze. "Hello, Vincent," she said calmly. For a moment, genuine shock crossed his face. Then rage replaced it. "You," he snarled. "You stupid little—" "Careful," Lena interrupted. "You're surrounded, at least a dozen weapons pointed at you right now, so choose your next words very carefully." Kane's eyes darted around the room, finally seeing what he'd missed. The operatives emerging from shadows, all armed, all focused on him. "You think this changes anything?" Kane's voice was vicious. "You think you've won?" "I know I have." Lena stepped closer. "You broke out of prison for this, risked everything for one more chance to hurt us, and you failed." "I haven't failed yet." Kane's finger tightened on his trigger. Lena didn't hesitate. She fired. The shot took Kane in the shoulder, spinning him around. His gun clattered to the floor. He went down hard, gasping in pain and shock. Thomas's people swarmed in, securing Kane, calling for medical and police. Lena lowered her weapon, hands perfectly steady, and felt something settle in her chest. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just completion. Adrian burst through the front door moments later, eyes wild, and stopped short when he saw Lena standing there unharmed, Kane bleeding on the floor. She walked to Adrian and into his arms. "It's over," she said quietly. "Really over this time." Adrian held her so tight she could feel his heart racing against her chest. "Don't ever scare me like that again." No promises. But she was smiling. "I'm not going back to being careful and protected. This is who I am now." "I know." He pulled back to look at her, and his expression was full of pride and love and something almost like awe. "And I wouldn't change a thing." Kane was taken into custody that night, along with his 3 surviving operatives. This time, there would be no escape, no second chances. The charges were extensive enough to ensure he'd spend the rest of his life in prison. Margaret, hearing of Kane's recapture, pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'd be out in 7 years if she behaved herself. Neither of them would ever threaten Lena or Adrian again. In the aftermath, as the safe house was cleared and statements were given to police, Adrian and Lena returned to the estate. Dawn was breaking over the snow-covered grounds, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. They stood at the window in Adrian's study, watching the sunrise, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "What now?" Adrian asked quietly. "Now we live," Lena said. "Really live, without looking over our shoulders. There will be other threats, other enemies. I know, but we'll face them together." She turned in his arms to look at him. "As equals." Adrian smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "Yes, as equals." The weeks that followed felt like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for too long. Lena settled back into the estate, but her role had transformed. She wasn't Adrian's assistant anymore. She was his partner in every sense, sitting in on business meetings, offering strategic advice, managing security protocols. The staff welcomed her back with genuine warmth. Mary cried and made Lena's favorite foods for a week straight. Joe showed her the new security measures he'd helped implement. Even Thomas, stoic as ever, admitted he was glad to have her back. "You've changed," he said one morning as they reviewed surveillance footage together. "In a good way." "Charlotte would be pleased to hear you say that." "She knows. I told her." Thomas glanced at her. She says you were the best student she's ever trained, that you have instincts that can't be taught. Lena felt a flush of pride. Tell her thank you. Tell her yourself she's coming to visit next month. 3 months after Kane's recapture, on a cold December evening, exactly 1 year after the night Lena had nearly died in the snow, Adrian asked her to meet him in the garden. She found him standing by the fountain, the same fountain whose frozen water she'd stumbled past that terrible night. But now it was decorated with lights, hundreds of them, turning the space into something magical. What's all this? Lena asked, stepping into the glow. Adrian turned to face her. He was dressed simply, dark slacks and a sweater, but his expression was anything but simple. It was open, vulnerable, full of emotion he usually kept locked away. A year ago tonight, he said, I found you dying in my driveway, and I made a choice to save you, not knowing it would end up saving me too. Lena's throat tightened. Adrian stepped closer, took her hands in his. You've transformed my life, Lena. Made me believe in things I'd given up on. Made me want to be better, not just stronger. And I know we've been through hell together, fought battles neither of us should have had to fight. But I wouldn't change a single moment, because every moment led us here. He dropped to one knee, and Lena's breath caught. I'm not good at pretty words, Adrian continued, his voice rough with emotion. I'm not romantic. I'm demanding and dangerous, and I come with enemies and threats that will never fully go away. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a ring, simple platinum with a single perfect diamond. But I love you, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. And I'm asking you to build a life with me. Not as my employee, not as someone I protect, but as my equal, my partner, my wife. Tears streamed down Lena's face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Lena looked up at him and said, I have one condition. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Oh? No more secrets. No more trying to protect me from the hard parts of your world. We face everything together, or we face nothing at all. Deal. He kissed her forehead. Though you realize you're agreeing to a life of constant danger and possibly terrible business dinners? I survived a blizzard, a prison break, and Vincent Kane. I think I can handle business dinners. Adrian laughed, deep and genuine and full of joy. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the estate. Charlotte flew in from Scotland. Thomas gave Lena away since she had no family of her own. Mary made a cake that was probably too beautiful to eat. The staff attended and cried. It was simple and perfect, and everything Lena had never let herself dream of having. On their wedding night, as they danced alone in the ballroom with snow falling outside the windows, Adrian whispered, No regrets? Not a single one. Lena rested her head on his chest. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. In the years that followed, they built an empire together. Adrian's business grew, but now he had Lena's strategic mind and tactical expertise backing him. They were formidable, separately powerful, together unstoppable. Threats came, as they always would. Competitors, enemies, people who thought they could exploit weakness, but they found none. Because Lena Carter-Voss was no longer a vulnerability. She was a weapon sharp and deadly, and anyone foolish enough to come for her husband learned that lesson the hard way. They had 2 children, a daughter named Elena, after Adrian's sister, and a son they called James. Both grew up learning that strength and kindness weren't opposites, that power came with responsibility, that protecting the people you loved meant sometimes being willing to fight. On Christmas Eves, Lena would sometimes stand at the front window and look out at the snow, remembering the girl she'd been. Broken, desperate, certain she was going to die alone in the cold. And she'd think about how sometimes the worst night of your life was just the beginning of something extraordinary. How surviving meant more than just not dying. It meant choosing to live, to fight, to become something stronger than the darkness that tried to consume you. Adrian would find her there, wrap his arms around her, and they'd stand together watching the snowfall. Not as survivor and savior anymore, but as equals who'd been through hell and chosen each other anyway. What are you thinking about? He'd ask. How far we've come, Lena would say. How different everything is. Do you miss it? The simplicity of before? Before you mean when I was sleeping in a maid's quarters and terrified all the time? Lena would turn in his arms, smiling. Not for a second. Good. Adrian would kiss her temple. Because I have plans for us. Big plans. We always have plans. These are different, better. His eyes would light up with that intensity she'd fallen in love with. Wait until you hear, and she'd kiss him to shut him up, because sometimes the plans could wait. Sometimes it was enough to just be here, together, alive and whole, and impossibly, wonderfully in love. The blizzard had tried to kill her. Instead, it had brought her home. And in the end, that made all the difference.